So it's been a couple of days. And Joey McGuire, who has had his honeymoon period, a guy that a lot of people like, but even Joey is having to take some tough questions right now after just a play or two here and there keeps them from 2-0. But last night they did get great news, and I think maybe expected news. Micah Hudson, the young man who plays right here in Central Texas at Lake Belton High School, could have gone to any school in America. Texas Tech received his commitment last night. I spoke with him a couple of hours ago. We will have the interview with Micah Hudson on why he did it last night. We'll do that here at the bottom of the hour. So good news for Tech. It doesn't mean they get a win in the win-loss column, Craig and Paul, but they needed some pretty good news, and they get it with him. He's the highest-ranked recruit ever to commit to Texas Tech.
Yeah, it's big news for them, and he's going to fit in their offense really well. He's a superstar player. He's had his choice to go anywhere he wants, and he picked Texas Tech. So the first gigantic recruiting win for Joey McGuire. I'm curious to see if this turns into, can he stack these up? Because that is what's going to make the difference between Texas Tech being a good team and a great team, is being able to stack up the good players. You remember, that doesn't, and I'm not trying to knock Houston here. They've had a good run, but you don't want it to be like Ed Oliver going to Houston and then nobody else but Ed Oliver goes to Houston. You want Micah Hudson and all the players that are the same caliber as Micah Hudson to follow, but you can't get everybody to follow until you get the first one.
No, I mean, it's absolutely massive news for Joey and the Red Raiders. I mean, they had been thought to be in the lead for Micah Hudson for a little while now. I didn't know that he was getting close to a decision. I wasn't following it super close, like probably a lot of Red Raiders fans and Texas fans and tons of other fan bases were. I wondered, actually, when I saw that, of like, was that like, hey, we need some good news here. Can you go ahead and pop this commit? Because you know what I'm saying, though? Like, we've lost the first two games. Like, we could really use a jolt here. And so, boom, here you go. Here's this 5-star commit. Maybe that had nothing to do with it, but it at least crossed my mind of, like, they could really use some good news, and they got it last night with Micah Hudson. So however it worked out, whether it was just funny timing or, hey, let's give the fan base a jolt, they did that, and they landed a star. I mean, he's an absolute stud. He was on national TV last week as Lake Belton lost in a close game on ESPN's networks, and the country got a little taste of him there. Didn't have like his most crazy wow game, but you certainly saw the potential and the talent there. And, yeah, that's an absolutely huge land for that staff. I know that former Baylor player Brian Nance got a lot of the credit for helping secure that commitment. So, you know, I think those guys' time here in Central Texas and being around Belton and being around, you know, this area, Waco, Temple, Belton, Killeen, certainly did some favors as well as far as the relationships. The head coach of Lake Belton, Brian Cope's been around here for a really long time, so I'm sure that, you know, that helped having the track record here to, you know, just that relationship. And so, yeah, it's an absolutely massive get for them, and they've got a great class that's been shaping up already. It's like top 25-ish right now. Not sure how they expect to close, but I'd imagine landing a 5-star like Micah Hudson will be appealing to a lot of other highly ranked guys potentially. So, yeah, go out there and win some football games and ride this momentum. But that was much needed, and again, just huge for them.
Yeah, it's a big deal, and I had a chance, thanks to Brian Cope, the head coach at Lake Belton, to record an interview with him. He pulled him out of class to have a chance, and we'll have that at the bottom of the hour. So there is that. Now, when it comes to, and speaking of that, we really focused a lot on Texas and Alabama, all Baylor and Utah, and the repercussions. Mac Rhodes today, by the way, at 4:20 here on 365 Sports. But Texas Tech, the loss to Wyoming, the loss to Oregon at home, they're 0-2. And they were one of the teams that when people thought about who could be this year's version of TCU, or 2 years ago, Baylor, that Tech seemed to be the one that was not even, like, they were expected to be a part of the mix, and they can still be a part of the mix, but this does at least bring a little bit of tension in Lubbock, Texas.
Yeah, I mean, I think that, they've got to remember that they're still in year two. They just lost to Oregon, who's going to beat most of the teams they play this year. They played them tight. It was at home. There's a lot riding on that game. But, hype and reality are two different things. And you're probably right where, you really were going to be either way. You thought at best or at worst you're going to be 1-1, and you happen to lose to Wyoming. You're 0-2. The only thing you can do now is just move forward. So, we'll see what happens with Tech down the line, but I don't think it's too terribly different than where they really were going in, because if they're 1-1 and not 0-2 right now, to me, I don't think there's much of a difference between the hype train and Joey McGuire.
I'll disagree. I think there's a difference because you're 1-1, and you can say, well, at least like the only loss was at home, is close in the end against a really good team in Oregon, who's a top 15 type of team. But the fact that you had Wyoming prior to that, it's like now it's a double whammy of that's 2 losses. It's 0-2. It's a bit of a hole. You lose one game against Oregon, you win the rest of them. And I know that there wasn't like national championship aspirations by any means, but like losing those 2 right out of the gate pops every bubble, but like you can win the Big 12 still. But like anything grander than that is off the table basically now. Whereas if you had just lost to Oregon, in theory, that's still in play. And I know that's a long shot, but I'm just saying as far as the hype goes, you still, I think, would have had that as long as you had beat Wyoming. Now, I mean, there you are. You're in a press conference. You're getting questions about whether the quarterback's the right guy, whether the coaching decisions are the right decisions, because now you're in this hole. And it's certainly reasonable to ask. I mean, Tyler Shuck had 3 interceptions, and the one there at the end obviously was the big dagger, the pick 6. It wasn't all on him. There are other aspects to the game that, created some of the mistakes that led to that result. But there is a little bit of like, are we going to see Baron Morton? Like, do we need to see Baron Morton? There's at least that thought kind of going around, because through these first 2 games, Tyler Shuck hasn't been exceptionally great. And when you came into this season, what was the big talk? When Tyler Shuck starts, they're like 8-1 or whatever, right? That was the big stat, remember? And, you can have fun with numbers, but it was true, and obviously has been a guy in and out of the lineup. And so you thought, okay, well, if he can finally get healthy with the way that they looked when he played last year, that's going to be a big deal for them. And through 2 games, he hasn't been like that star quarterback for them. So I think that there are some questions right now. Luckily for them, the schedule, they'll get their first win this week. Then I think they have West Virginia to open Big 12 play. West Virginia is kind of still trying to figure them out a little bit. But, I think that Tech's still fine, but a little bit of the steam has been let out of the bubble, so to speak.
What happens when you lose a game? Wyoming, of course, playing in Austin against Texas this weekend. But when you lose a game like that, just as if when Baylor lost to Texas State or others lose a game like that you're not expected to lose, it does pretty much put you on – you're on the clock. You cannot then lose a game or 2 down the road that you're not supposed to lose. If you want to be a team that has what you could consider a pretty good year. And so at 0-2, there are a lot of games in the Big 12 that are going to be dicey. We know that. Their schedule sees that. But you have both Baylor and Tech, who are supposed to have been, not Baylor so much, but Tech especially, and they play each other in 3 weeks. And it'll be interesting to find out, is Baylor at that time 1-4? Tech will have a couple more wins in their pocket, but still, that game, and we know what happened last year up in Lubbock, Baylor thumped them pretty good. So there we are with Texas Tech at 0-2, but they do get the nice announcement. A lot of you talking about it, Texas fans even complimenting Tech for getting Micah Hudson in the fold.
And I know there's probably a lot of Texas fans that are sitting there going, we'll see where he signs, and other schools that are saying, we'll see where he signs, but he does seem to have a pretty strong relationship. This was the thought of where he was going to go initially, so I have utmost confidence if anybody's going to hold on to him, it'll be these guys, but certainly it is recruiting, and you never know. If they go lose like 8 games, does that have an effect? I don't expect that, but that's also part of 0-2 is like, all right, well, you better win some games and back up your vision there. But yeah, it's too early to be all that worried, and it is a time to celebrate for if you're Texas Tech, because you got a big time player to build this program moving forward, and should go out and get your first win this weekend against Tarleton. And I think the way the Big 12 schedule sets up, you mentioned Baylor, but they play a couple games before that. They play Houston, they play West Virginia. Guess what? Yeah. Those are all winnable games too, so they could very well go on a run here if they just sharpen some things up, and this conversation will be a distant memory.
Quinn Ewers has won another national award. The